I'm informed that the minister will be coming a bit later because they are signing some agreement. But we need to start, and the remarks the minister will make them as he joins us. On this note, I would like to invite the Honorable Jessica, the Deputy Secretary General at the EAC East African Community, to come and make her presentation on disaster risk reduction, management, and all the other speakers, please come and join the DSCG so that it doesn't sit here alone on this high table. And this is the way we are going to do. We are making the presentations, one presentation after another, and at the end, we will offer a session for questions. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Nice to have you all here this afternoon at our third side event. The EAC has been participating in this COP right from the beginning, and we have had a number of side events and also participated at a number of other side events organized by other people. You all know what the EAC represents, so I am here to talk today about disaster risk reduction and management. What should we learn from the EAC? This does not mean the EAC has done very, very well on disaster risk reduction. EAC has tried, has moved a little faster than a number of other regions, but there's still much more to learn. And by the end of this presentation, we hope that we will also get some views from you who have participated in this side event, and maybe also later after here. So the East African community, as you know, those flags represent the countries: the Republic of Burundi, Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, South Sudan, and Uganda. We got a new baby. That is the Republic of South Sudan that joined us recently. And that is the map and location of the East African region. We have not shaded South Sudan, but South Sudan is still in the transition of joining the community fully. So just at the beginning of this month is when we started. So there's still a roadmap of fully integrating the Republic of South Sudan into the community. So you can see that it forms a bigger part of the Great Lakes region. When you talk about the East African community, it lies astride those big lakes and also between the Rift Valleys, Eastern Rift Valley and Western Rift Valley. The East African community integration process is anchored on 4 pillars. The Customs Union, which was signed in 2005 and came to full effect in 2010, and we have a single customs territory in place where people can trade freely within the region, and we have rules of origin for the goods and certificates of origin of the goods from within the region so that those goods are exempt from a number of taxes. I will not go into the details of that. If you want, you will read more about that. The Common Market Protocol is the second pillar that was signed in 2010, and it is under implementation currently. It has 4 freedoms: the freedom of movement of persons, of goods, of services, and of capital, and 2 rights, the right of residence and the right of establishment. So East Africans are free to move within the region, to move their capital, to move their services and goods within the region, and also be able to establish their companies, their businesses, and seek employment across the region. And in order to implement that, there are so many programs and activities to harmonize our regulations and policies within the region. Still, this is not fully implemented, but it is under implementation. And 2013, we also did sign a monetary union protocol, and we do hope to have a single currency by 2025. And ultimately, we do hope to have a political federation where we have a united East Africa and hopefully comparable to the United States of America. The dream is big. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details about the EAC, but I'll focus on the topic at hand. We draw our mandate from Chapter 18 of the treaty, which is in cooperation in agriculture, the Article 45 on the Common Market Protocol, because there's so many of whatever we do that is really anchored under the Common Market Protocol, 19 of the Treaty on Environment and Natural Resources Management in the region. So the EAC, as we are all aware, because of its location, but also because of being in Africa, is one of the regions that is seriously suffering from the impacts of disasters. And some of these disasters are caused by natural phenomena, but some of them due to man-made hazards. You are aware that our region is a hotspot for conflicts. So there are people who actually move away from their productive areas, and because they are displaced, and because of numbers and the intricacies of displacements, we have a number of challenges that follow them. Now, the EAC is prone to the natural hazards, including floods, droughts, earthquakes, landslides, very strong winds and hailstorms, lightning, and name it, a number of these. And the secondary impacts of this is therefore diseases, epidemics, destruction of infrastructure, destruction of livelihoods, of homesteads, of farms, and everything that really people's livelihoods are based on. We also know more clearly that the causes of some of these include the climate change impacts and variability that actually results into a number of these effects. But sometimes environmental degradation that of course is enhanced by climate change, but environmental degradation due to population pressure, activities, and due to expansion of farms and a number of other methods which are not really good enough that result into this land degradation. Rapid urbanization, our region is one of those that is urbanizing at a very, very fast rate, at a rate of more than 20% per annum. People are moving from the villages to the towns in hope of getting jobs, but also running away from disasters. So a lot of rural-urban migration is taking place. And therefore, there is an upswell of population in these urban areas and those areas of concentration. And some of these are biodiversity hotspots or areas which are productive. So when more people go into these areas, for example, protected areas like forests, then they have more impact on degradation on this land, and that results into disasters again. Now, we do have some active volcanoes and earthquakes that are taking place. Recently, I'm sure you heard about earthquakes that shook parts of Tanzania and parts of Uganda, and a number of people are still nursing the effects of these earthquakes. Poverty is still a phenomenon that is impacted on by disasters, but also contributes towards disaster. And so our governments are working so hard to make sure that we fight poverty and address the gaps in knowledge and in technologies, but also to upscale adaptation measures that can build resilience among the communities in order for them to become disaster prepared. Our institutions are still weak, and so we need to build these institutions. Our region is equally predisposed to man-made disasters, as I did mention earlier. We do have serious urban fires, as you know. Maybe every week or every month you hear a story or you see a story in the newspapers about a shopping mall catching fire or a small shop somewhere catching fire. So there are minor disasters which build up to really impact on the population. But we do have bigger ones that are as a result of the environmental degradation, which results into water pollution. So the water quality and quantity is seriously affected. We also have serious consequences of HIV and AIDS still in the region. This is being addressed, but it's still a problem. So we know some of these key hazards, and I don't really want to go into so much about this, but desertification, pollution, soil erosion, and therefore affecting the quantity of our production, particularly agricultural production, and affecting our infrastructure, and all this is a big problem. Lightning, windstorms, hailstorms have become more increasing of recent, and you hear stories about schools getting hit by lightning and a number of children being struck dead. And we have a number of epidemics. We see a number of zoonotic diseases coming up in our region, one of them being Ebola, cholera, and a number of other diseases. Malaria is very endemic in our region, even though in some parts of Africa have been able to fight malaria. We still have malaria as a very big problem in the region. And this really impacts on livelihoods. So pests and diseases and conflicts and all these that I've mentioned already. So a lot of efforts need to be put in place. And I'll just show you now a few pictures that show the extent of the extreme consequences of disasters in our region. That is a picture that was taken in northeastern Kenya, where a number of livestock just died because they had no water, no pasture. And recently in many parts of southwestern Uganda and northern Rwanda, also we had very serious droughts that have been running for 6 months. And so many people have been affected because there was no water, and the animals are really suffering. And for the first time in the history of these people, they have been given relief, food relief. There were some of them said they didn't even want to receive the relief because it's not in their culture to be fed by others, but there was no way out. They had to go through this. And these are consequences of floods. These are very common in our region, and homesteads, and lives are really lost in some of these. Sometimes you find children even getting lost in manholes. This was a picture taken somewhere when someone sitting on the roof of his house and calling out for help, and people out there. And recently, our coastal cities, for example, in Tanzania, in Dar es Salaam, a number of floods have occurred, and unprecedented floods. Some areas that were not so much prone to floods, like Dar es Salaam, Morogoro, Kilimanjaro, and the coastal areas in Tanzania, a number of places in Kenya, and in Rwanda, in Kampala, all our cities are actually prone to disasters. The next picture was taken from Bujumbura, Kanyosa River, and you can see the level of soil erosion. All our soils are just swept into the lakes, and this affects our productivity. Landslides are very, very common phenomena in the region. You are aware of the worst landslide that took place in Uganda on the slopes of Mount Elgon, where more than 200 people or 300 people were buried alive. Some of them are still nursing consequences of that. But also, we have eutrophication of our waters, and we see most of our waters now covered by algal bloom, because this is not only due to the floods, but also the consequences of pollution in our waters. And this is very disastrous, because people fetch this water to drink and fish here, and a number of fish in such places have been found to be blind. So if the fish can get blind, how about the people who eat the fish? So we will also get blind soon, unfortunately, unless we take steps. Now, in the EAC, we've put in place a number of instruments to address disasters. We have, in the past, many people have, up to now actually, many people still deny the fact that disasters are a reality. Even communities now are beginning to accept that there are disasters, but over the years, it has not been an easily acceptable phenomena. So now our countries have prioritized disaster risk reduction approaches in their interventions, as well as taking climate change issues a little bit more seriously than before. There is more political will, therefore, and community support as a result of this understanding that if we don't take action, the consequences are quite more. So we have put in place a number of instruments, and this includes technical working groups and a number of policy documents. This disaster risk reduction working group has been constituted, composed of technical officers from each of the countries of the partner states, working together with experts at the regional headquarters, but also working closely with disaster risk reduction, UN disaster risk reduction office, regional office in Nairobi. The EAC disaster risk reduction sub-regional platform has been put in place, and it is operational and it meets quite often. A disaster risk reduction and management strategy was adopted by the Council of Ministers, and it is under implementation. The climate change strategy, policy, and master plan has been put in place, and working together with the disaster risk reduction and management strategies, recognize disaster risk reduction as a tool for climate change adaptation. So the offices responsible for disaster risk reduction and climate change unit work together to address these issues holistically. Anchoring of disaster risk reduction and management unit at the EAC is in transition, but we still have a skeletal staff that have been put in place, and we do hope that this function within our institutional review will be anchored under the Secretary General's office, so that the Secretary General takes responsibility personally. And this will help us to implement the strategy. And a number of other sectoral strategies have also been put in place to address the issue from different aspects. We have a disaster risk reduction and management bill, and at this point I would like to introduce Honorable Patricia Hajabachiga. Could you please stand up for recognition? She is a member of the East African Legislative Assembly, a former minister in the Republic of Rwanda, permanent secretary, very technical in these issues. And she did move a private member's bill for disaster risk reduction. And this bill was discussed by the heads of state, and the heads of state say, okay, integrate management of disasters in the bill. And this has been integrated as well. Now, this bill is ready for accent by the heads of state, and we do hope that effective next year, we will implement the bill. It has all the necessary tools for addressing disaster risks and management in the region. Best practices and lessons from the region. First of all, as I did mention earlier, all our partner states, those are the countries in the region, have comprehensive disaster risk reduction policy frameworks in place, drawing, of course, from what they had originally, but also from what we have done at the regional level to ensure that we harmonize these policy frameworks at national levels. And each partner state, therefore, has put in place relevant institutions and enacted some legislations and formed the DRR platforms at national and community levels. And through these platforms, we are able to address area-specific disaster issues and bring them up. Now, the bill, once accented to as a regional law, it will overarch the national laws and will take precedence over all other national laws. The disaster risk reduction management is implemented by various government and non-government organizations, international organizations, and community-based organizations. So we need to support these institutions to build their capacity in order to be able to implement. EAC was one of the last regional economic communities to undertake of the Hugo framework. But because of the interventions and the interest that we've put in place to address disasters and ensuring that we implement the Hugo framework, the EAC is ranking among the best implementers of the framework. And the Regional Office for Disaster Risk Reduction is very happy and closely working with us. So we are at an advanced stage to ensure that this is implemented. And the EAC is also participating very, very closely with the African Union Commission in ensuring that this framework is implemented, not only in our REC, but also to share experiences with other regional economic communities. This success was, of course, built on a number of strategies. One of them is strategic partnerships and cooperation with the African Union, UNISDR, UNDP, and other supporting countries like Japan. And the EAC actively participated during the Sendai framework. So we are also implementing the Sendai framework of action. Cooperation and collaboration at the national institutions was, it still continues, and it's an added advantage. And of course, with the EALA, the East African Legislative Assembly, and specifically the committee that is responsible for environment, agriculture, and natural resources. Needless to say, we have still a number of challenges that require addressing holistically. We still do not have a regional specific early warning system for disasters, and I think it will be very important to have such a system in place so that at a regional level we are quickly able to provide information in time. A more focus on response at the regional level is what we see, and yet we need decision makers to be a little bit more active, and we need more visibility of all the actors in ensuring that the response is timely, but information also comes early enough. Of course, there are issues of financial and technical limitations to support implementation of the frameworks we've put in place, the institutions, the instruments, activities, and specific interventions. We still go back to beg for relief in order to address some of these challenges. The level of public perception and awareness of risks is also still very low, and we need to enhance this. So communication strategy is one area that we are focusing on in order to educate, inform people, and ensure that the early warning about any pending disaster reaches people in time. And therefore, we require scientific tools to be able to do this. We need disaster education and capacity development, the building of the communication strategy, as I did mention earlier, and then the finances and the tools for hazard mapping and early warning system. Some of these we already doing them, they are in place, but still not enough. We need to ensure that they are fully in place and operational, and that the strategies, guidelines are understood by everyone. We will have to employ methods like using telephones so that people can receive timely information on their phones. Also initiating the process of developing a framework for cooperation in transboundary disaster situations is an area that we need to work on, and we need to continue fundraising and advocating for adequate resources to increase investment in disaster risk reduction, training, building capacity of all other sectors, including the infrastructure sector, so that when infrastructure is put in place, it has to be resilient. People, individuals also need to know how to structure their buildings and their farms and all these details that really need to be put in place. Some of them my colleague David will talk about in terms of agriculture. Then development of mechanisms for integrating disaster risk reduction into educational programs. We do have the Inter-University Council for East Africa that is addressing this with the institutions of higher learning, training institutions and universities and curriculum institutions, so that we can have education about disasters, disaster risk management in our education systems. A lot needs to be done. We will be hearing some from you. And so I thank you very much for your kind attention. Join the region with very resilient people who can jump so high when they are very happy, but when they are down because of disasters, they cannot jump that high. And we need to keep them jumping high every day, smiling, so that we can all smile. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Honorable Jessica Rio, Deputy Secretary General, East Africa, for a very informative, very excellent presentation. Now we move on with the next presenter, who is none less than Mr. David Wafula, presenting on climate smart agriculture in the context of CADEP agenda. Thank you.
So, moderator, ladies and gentlemen, there's a problem with the slide. Well, my presentation will focus on climate smart agriculture in the context of the EAC CADAP agenda. CADAP stands for the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program. This is an Africa-wide, continent-wide agriculture agenda for transformation. Basically, it's like the main mechanism driving the agriculture agenda on the continent. And therefore, the focus of my presentation will be to try and demonstrate the extent to which the East African community has embraced climate smart agriculture in the context of this CADAP program.
Sorry for technical problem, but it is solved.
Okay, so in this presentation, basically I've given like the introduction. I'll briefly touch on the importance of the agricultural sector in the EAC in terms of its contribution to, let's say, GDP and the livelihoods of people in East Africa. And then I'll proceed to touch on the extent to which we have been able to mainstream issues of climate-smart agriculture in the EAC CAADP agenda. I'll spend a bit of time on that. And then before I conclude the presentation, I will also touch a bit on issues to do with the aflatoxin being one of the challenges actually undermining agricultural productivity, food security, and also issues around trade in the region. So if you allow me to proceed, agriculture actually occupies a very, very prominent role in the EAC integration process, taking into consideration the fact that about 80% of the population in the EAC directly or indirectly depend on agriculture for livelihoods, income, food security, and so forth. If you look at the level of contribution to GDP, this ranges from about 25% to 42% in the partner states. But while appreciating that, the high dependence on agriculture, which is to a large extent rain-fed, also makes the region very, very vulnerable to the effects of climate change. And for this reason, the agriculture sector, thank you. So that was the outline. I think I've covered that. So I'm on this slide just talking about the importance of agriculture in the EAC. I've already mentioned that it's really of significant importance. And because of that, in the context of also climate change, is one of the sectors that has been earmarked for strengthening resilience and adaptation to climate change in line with the Paris Agreement, particularly aspects to do with the nationally determined contributions. I think it's important to mention that EAC, being one of the regional economic communities under the African Union, we are very, very committed to support implementation of regional initiatives. And one of the current regional initiatives driving agricultural transformation on the continent is the African Union Heads of State Malabo Declaration of 2014, which focuses on accelerated agricultural growth and transformation for shared prosperity and improved livelihoods. But very, very important, it gives very, very strong attention to issues of climate change, particularly in the agricultural sector. Malabo Declaration has a number of commitments, as you can see, 7 key commitments revolving around issues to do with the investment in agriculture, issues to do with the reduction of hunger, issues to do with the poverty alleviation, issues to do with the enhancing trade. But most important, declaration number 6 focuses on the need to enhance resilience of livelihoods and production systems to climate variability and related risks. Aligned to those commitments, we also have a number of goals. The need, urging African governments to allocate at least some good money to the agricultural sector. the need to double agricultural productivity by 2025, but also one of the goals that comes out outstanding in terms of climate change is the need to increase Africa's farm resilience to climate change and weather by 30%. So that is very, very also significant in Malabo Declaration. So in our alignment to the Malabo Declaration, EAC has been able to develop a CAADP compact. And this has also been adopted by the Council of Ministers. This was in September 2016. So it is really a high-level agreement and a commitment framework which spells out actions and partnerships required to drive agricultural transformation in the East African community. And in the preparation of this compact, which was very, very inclusive and participatory, it was done carefully to ensure that also issues to do with the climate change are considered. EAC partner states have national compacts, and also consideration was given in terms of ensuring that issues of importance as far as the national compacts are concerned are considered. At the continental level, issues also to do with Malabo, at the global level, issues to do with the Sustainable Development Goals, all those were taken into consideration. So the priorities that we have in the EAC CAADP Compact are 6. But the ones that are pertinently touch on issues to do with climate change and climate smart agriculture are 3. Number 1, number 3, and number 5. Sustainable natural resource and management, food supply and reducing hunger, which also embraces aspects of food safety, and then enhancing resilience of livelihoods and production systems, and also management of risks. So this is how we have been able to accommodate aspects of climate agriculture in the EAC CAADP Compact. When you unpack those priorities, if you unpack sustainable natural resource and management, the compact will focus on promoting sustainable governance, institutional management for efficient use of shared ecosystems, issues to do with investment in environmental, generally conservation, and all that. Issues to do with supporting water catchment conservation, soil biodiversity. When you proceed to unpack the priority on enhancing resilience of livelihoods and production systems and management of risks, the compact will focus on promoting capacity for enhancement of resilience in the agricultural sector, promoting agricultural insurance to attract and encourage investment in the sector, supporting climate smart agriculture programs to address poverty and general issues to do around socioeconomic development and welfare, mainstreaming risk reduction in policies, strategies, and investment plans, and also improving capacity for disaster preparedness. So basically, the compact is a framework that spells out our priorities in terms of the rationale and the justification, and also what we need to do. But when it comes to how it should be done in terms of elaboration of these priorities, we are in the process of formulating the EAC Regional Agriculture Investment Plan that will elaborately spell out, unpack these priorities, and also give some direction in terms of the level of investment required to achieve the desired level of agricultural transformation. So that is currently what is being developed. Of course, ensuring that we are very, very much aligned to the EAC mandate and the relevant agriculture sector instruments. So the focus of the investment plan will be basically to ensure that we have an instrument that can be used for resource mobilization, to spur the required degree of agriculture growth and development. So as far as the EAC CAADP agenda is concerned, over the years, I must say we've been able to record a number of achievements. Of course, we have an instrument already adopted by the Council of Ministers. We are also making some good progress towards a formulation of the Regional Agriculture Investment Plan. And it's also encouraging to note that EAC partner states have really appreciated CAADP as really as an instrument of guiding and organizing the agricultural sector in terms of budgeting and all that. We have also seen increased degree in terms of coordination. At least one can see where the country's priorities are as far as agriculture is concerned. And also we have a dedicated climate change coordination unit at the Secretariat, which has laid a good foundation to address issues around the climate change and also climate smart agriculture. But having said that, of course, there are some challenges. While the Malabo Declaration requires partner states to allocate at least 10% of their GDP to agriculture, our countries are striving towards that direction. But maybe with the exception of Rwanda and Burundi, the rest are yet to reach the 10% mark. There are also issues to do with the addressing utilization and absorptive capacity. Even the little that is allocated to the agriculture sector sometimes is never fully utilized. Sometimes it goes back to the treasury. But there are important lessons to learn as far as the CAADP agenda is concerned, given that CAADP is really a cross-cutting agenda, cutting across issues to do with the crops, livestock, fisheries, forestry, and all that. Issues of coordination are very, very important, not just at the national level, but also at the regional level. They need to engage relevant parliamentary committees and make sure that they accord issues of CAADP priority when it comes to investment and all that. It's very, very important. And the need to involve a wide range of stakeholders, particularly non-state actors in the CAADP process, also has come out as something very, very fundamental. And then they need to allocate resources and strengthen issues to do with the data collection and collation. Because CAADP is about evidence-based decision-making and planning. So there has been really a challenge sometimes in terms of having concrete data that can form policy decisions. My time is almost, but I'll just take a couple of minutes to mention that aflatoxin is really one of the challenges undermining, let's say, the integration agenda in the EAC. In the context of trying to increase agricultural productivity, food security, as well as expansion of trade opportunities. And for that reason, aflatoxin prevention and control is actually one of our flagship projects, just to ensure that we really try to mitigate the impacts and effects of aflatoxin, which cuts across human health, animal health, causing cancer, suppression of growth in livestock, as you can see. And also trade. It's estimated that we lose about $750 million in a year because of unable to access international markets because of aflatoxin contamination. But there have been some dedicated efforts in terms of coming up with ecologically friendly technologies that can reduce aflatoxin contamination, particularly at the production level. We now have a technology called AflaSafe, which has been successfully used in other parts of Africa like Nigeria, which can reduce contamination from in the range of about 80 to 90%. And EAC partner states are actually in the process of also creating an enabling environment to introduce and deploy this technology in the region. And also from the partner states, we have really seen a high level of commitment in terms of funding, in terms of infrastructure to address aflatoxin. At the regional level, we have been able to come up with a very, very robust aflatoxin prevention and control strategy. The next step will be basically focusing on issues of implementation and resource mobilization. And also we have been able to generate a total of 11 evidence-based technical papers, which really are very, very informative in terms of key findings, recommendations on how you can deal with the aflatoxin, and also some policy briefs based on that. And we have been able to achieve this because of partnerships, working with the development partners, including USAID, EAC partner states, and also the African Union, particularly the NEPAD Planning and Coordinating Agency. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wafula. This is yet another excellent presentation. Let us move on to our last speaker, Ms. Rita. She's going to take us through mitigation actions in the EAC community.
Thank you. We've had quite a bit from the past two presentations on adaptation from the past presenters, so on climate smart agriculture and further still on disaster risk reduction. So now I'll just briefly touch on areas of work that we've been undertaking with EAC together with GIZ Uganda on the mitigation front of, or in terms of support. Oh, sorry, it's not. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So maybe briefly, I'll just introduce basically the collaboration work that we do. So this is together with EAC, as I mentioned earlier, and GIZ Uganda, which is on behalf of the German Federal Ministry of the Environment, and together with organization, which is the RCC Kampala, where I'm based. So in terms of regional scope, the Regional Collaboration Center in Kampala, which I'll also mention later, is based in Uganda and supporting countries in Eastern and Southern Africa. And GIZ Uganda mainly supports countries in East Africa, as you see in the map. And I'll later discuss mainly on collaboration efforts and how we've been moving together with EAC. And like it was posed at the beginning, the question is EAC doing it right? So based on what I'll be presenting and what we've heard from the previous speakers, it would be good to get feedback from the participants on this. We look at a mitigation landscape that is quite wide. I'm sure this is known to most of you or all of you. So we look as far back as the inception of nationally appropriate mitigation actions, which started as far back as 2009 at COP15. So with the main aim of measuring, reporting, and verifying of mitigation actions as a way to look at sustainable development, then low emission development strategies, the LEDs, which are also looking at a similar aspect, but looking at a more long-term mitigation actions. And then the clean development mechanism under the Kyoto Protocol, which has been in existence for the past 10 years or more, and also looking at mitigation mainly on a project-based front. And then the most recently being the INDCs, where countries and parties have been encouraged to submit their mitigation actions towards a post-2020 mitigation target. And of course, looking at reducing emissions to way below 2 degrees centigrade. So I'll just briefly give you a history on the UNFCCC Regional Collaboration Centers, where I'm based. The one in Kampala, which I'll mainly talk about, is in collaboration with the East African Development Bank, which is also working closely with the East African community. So there are 5 regional centers established globally by the UNFCCC, which is the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, together with local partners in the globally and also in the region. So for Africa, there are 2 centers, the one that I'm based at in Kampala and one in West Africa based in Togo. And further still looking at other centers. I won't go into detail because of limited time. However, the main mission is to catalyze climate action in the region. So we look at providing technical support to projects to further develop CDM projects and also other mitigation actions. We look at developing capacity of these projects, including both public and private sector, to better position them to participate in climate change actions. And we've also worked with various partners in the field. Initially, our focus was on the CDM, but post-Paris, we've expanded our scope to work beyond the CDM and also work on supporting countries to achieve their targets and the nationally determined contributions, and also development of standardized baselines under the CDM framework. We work with a broad range of stakeholders, so from governments to cities and towns. We work with various city authorities, international organizations and institutions, and funding agencies that we work with to be able to leverage finance for various projects in the region, in the East African community partner states, as well as businesses, private sector and banks, NGOs and academia. We've worked with universities such as in Uganda, the Makerere University and others, to see how best to integrate climate change within their curricula. So I'll just give you a brief about the GIZ program. GIZ was actually supposed to be here, but they were not able to make it. So I'll just give you just a brief into what GIZ does in partnership with EAC and the RCC Kampala. So the GIZ energy program in EAC supports clean and sustainable energy in the following fields, as you see in the slide. So energy policy and planning, electricity regulation, renewable energy and mini grid development, and energy efficiency. This is mainly through 2 of their programs, which is the PREP, which is the promotion of renewable energy and energy efficiency program, as well as their carbon markets, the carbon markets program, which is a global program by GIZ. They work together with both public and private sector through promoting both CDM projects and on a whole looking at carbon markets under their various programs. GIZ also works to promote private sector involvement in mitigation actions through NAMAs and NDCs and LEDs. So to see how best the private sector can work together with the public sector in this regard. They work to also, they've also supported on various occasions inclusion of component project activities under CDM projects for those that are familiar with the way the CDM mechanism works. They also support to develop the carbon markets instruments, which is under their carbon markets program, such as standardized baselines, as I'll mention later. And also in terms of establishment of regional exchange platforms. I'll mention one particular platform that GIZ is developing together with EAC, and which is in a feasibility stage and further looking to put it into action in the coming years. So in terms of standardized baseline development, standardized baselines are methodologies which are developed under the UNFCCC, but these are standardized in a way to reduce cost for project developers. So it is a way to make it easier for project developers under the CDM to develop their projects all through to the stage where they get issued certified emission reductions. So some of the baselines that have been developed have been, for instance, the Uganda Institutional Cook Stoves Standardized Baseline, which has been developed in Uganda and is looking to be replicated across the other EAC countries. Then one on sustainable charcoal production, which is also has already been approved and is looking to be renewed, and GIZ is working on having this renewed. And we're looking to also see how these baselines can be used beyond the CDM framework and further having it integrated within other mitigation actions like NAMAs, which we've seen with Rwanda. We've tried to work with Rwanda on this, as well as Uganda under sustainable energy solutions. In terms of capacity development, well, capacity development and enhancement could mean so much, but mainly in terms of events, which I've listed here. We've worked with various partners in the region, and of course, EAC being a main coordinator within the region to see how best to catalyze this climate action and further create awareness and build capacity within parties and non-state actors in the region. So one notable event that we usually organize annually is a pre-COP negotiators workshop, where we get together negotiators, both the junior and the senior negotiators, and we bring in experts from around the globe to further train and enhance their skills to be better, to be more effective at international climate change negotiations. Another event is the private sector workshop, where we have the private sector also trained in this regard, still on how best to integrate or better work with the government on climate change actions. These are some of the other events that we have carried out. So the gentleman with the cook stove is one of the project managers that GIZ has directly funded for his project, and I think this was during one of the workshops where he was having an exhibition of his products. So post-Paris, we're looking to further support implementation of mitigation actions in the region, such as NAMAs and NDCs, looking at the expanded scope and further integrating it within the EAC country's mandate and country goals. And we're also looking at further promoting market-based mechanisms. This is especially with regards to Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, which looks at market-based mechanisms and non-market approaches. The participation of the private sector remains one of the key goals that GIZ and RCC Kampala are looking to do. So through various platforms such as the NAZCA initiative under the UNFCCC, we're looking also to see how best we can support countries to leverage financing for their projects, to have bankable projects, and also in line with the trends in the market. So looking at what's the direction of financing, how best can we streamline this within the country goals as well. Then the last would be the EAC credit exchange mechanism, which is under feasibility now, but is something that EAC and GIZ have been working on together. This exchange mechanism is looking to create a platform, a knowledge sharing platform in terms of mitigation actions and climate mitigation policy, in a way that it will be able to promote climate mitigation actions within the region. So further, we're looking to promote awareness as much as we can. We're trying to get the media on board, so trying to engage the media as extensively as we can, and further creating knowledge management platforms to promote mitigation actions in the region and see how best the country can benefit from the Paris Agreement provisions under the Paris Agreement, and further linking them to sustainable development goals and seeing how best we can drive EAC forward. Of course, keeping in mind the country's priorities and goals and the country needs. So most of our trainings are structured on the needs of the countries and their priorities. Yes, that's all I had for you. These are the contacts in case you have any direct questions to especially GIZ. The contacts are here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rita. I I am also Jean-Baptiste Havugimana. I'm a Director of Productive Sectors at the East African Community Secretariat. So I was the moderator. Now we are done with the presentations. And can I get a round of applause for our speakers? Now we are moving to questions. We have 20 minutes. We have 10 minutes for one round of questions, another 10 minutes for the second round. One round, let us make 5 questions, but please, in the questions, let us be straight to the point. Thank you. Yes. Okay, Okrut.
Yeah. Thank you very much, moderator. I want to thank the presenters for this quite very interesting presentations. I have questions for each of you. For Jessica, I think I was very shocked about the dead animals. And when you had the DRR strategy, and your colleagues said that the strategic approach is applied, but response to the strategy is one, I think, where there's a problem. I think such a strategy was already detected, and now the response to the risk, which was not met at the time, and then we had that strategy. I noted this because also we noticed it in the context of oil and gas. We have the plan, oil spill contingency plan. But I think we are to move to the response aspect and provide the budget ready for response early, because some of these things come early in and we don't have seen those animals going to that stage. But let me stop there. Now, Wafula, I think we have no lesson here to learn from CADA, because yours is just talk. And I would rather we move, if you move away from CADA has been at the AU and has remained hanging there and has failed to cascade down to the people who are supposed to be done. But when you go to the AU meetings, you see them talk about CADAP is the flagship program. I hope this one doesn't become a CADAP at the EAC level. So what I would advise is that let CADAP, because at the country level, maybe my neighbor here, the director, is aware. I'm not even hearing about CADAP. Now at EAC, you have already made achievements, but if you are hearing from here, then there's a problem to bring it at country level, so that those lofty intentions are really understood at the level. So I think at the country level, that's what you need. For the last presenter, you are presenting very good things. I'm stuck with carbon credit, which I want to sell. So you're saying you are promoting carbon markets and whatever. Have CDM verified the credits. I'm stuck. I want to sell them. Can you just make a deal? I think the price has now risen up. I heard from here that the price has a little gone up, but I have verified the credit. I've gone all the verification necessary by whoever verifies, but I can't yet get the market. Now I sense you have, and you're just my neighbor, and you've been keeping quiet about this. Thank you very
much. He has asked all the questions, but let us give. Maybe we need to move to the other side. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the very good presentations. I have 2 questions for the Madam Honorable Erio and Mr. Wafula. My question to Madam Jessica, you said you're already preparing a framework for disaster risk reduction and management across the East African region. What I didn't hear from you is that how far have really the countries, and how far have the countries taken it up in their own policy frameworks at the country level, and how are these disaster risk management, if there are policies or strategies, unified? unified in terms of the Sendai framework and also the African chapter for disaster and risk management. For Mr. Wafula, it is good what you presented, but you didn't tell us exactly, as the earlier speaker said, what is really happening on the ground. Is it something that you are still thinking about, or has it been taken up by the countries in the policies? And whether there is, I mean, the countries are ready to take up the CSA as one of the technologies that will advance to this, up to the small scale, to the lower level grassroots farmers. Thank you.
One last one. Other than we ask on the second round.
Thank
if
you.
We still have a minute.
Thank you. I'm Nicholas Senyonjo from Uganda, representing here Climate Action Network, Uganda. And my question goes directly to Honorable Jessica Rio. Thank you for coming up with GCDRRM. And would like to know how you'd involve civil society organizations, especially those dealing with disasters, climate change, like Climate Action Network, Uganda, CanEU, and also the Go Green guys. They are here. I saw them in plenty. We want to come on board, and I think we could help a lot in advocacy because you might have this framework and also you lack funds. While you were still a minister, we used to collaborate a lot, and I hope since you are there, please don't forget us, bring us on board as CSO. Thank you.
Thank you. Speakers, I hope you have taken note of the questions. And the first questions was addressed to Honorable Jessica on the death of animals.
Okay. All right, thank you. Moderator, I think you will allow me to answer all the questions asked to me, not one by one, then at once. Yeah, then my colleagues will respond to the other questions. Yes, Dr. Kurut, it is really shocking to see the extreme impacts of disasters. And while predictions could be done earlier, and people could have been moved away from those places before losing all their animals in those big numbers, and also before very serious impacts. Recently, with a drought in southwestern Uganda, I saw the Minister for Disaster Preparedness on TV, and he was really on the spot, because now he was delivering the relief to the people, because for 6 months there was no drop of rain, no water, no pasture. The animals had become so thin, and this was the food basket of the country and beyond. So they asked him, well, what have you done? Why are you bringing food now? What did you do, all the time, the 6 months? So it's a challenging issue. And this is one of the challenges that I raised here. To be able to predict, but also act on the predictions before, the issues go out of hand. It still remains a challenge. And coordinating those efforts within the countries and the different institutions still remain a challenge. And that is why the bill, which hopefully very soon will become an act, will be able to help us. As I did mention earlier on, regional legislation supersedes national legislation. So an institutional framework has been proposed in this bill, and this institutional mechanism at a regional level, but also at national level, to be able to coordinate all the efforts. And as I mentioned, platforms for disaster risk reduction and management have now been put in place to be able to address these issues as they occur. But they still remain a challenge because of financial issues. Now, NEMA should be part of this platform. And I think if NEMA is not yet a part of this platform, we should make sure that we review the list of the institutions so that we really have these issues addressed holistically. And I think that also responds to the question of the framework. How far have the countries taken up at the issue at the national level? We have platforms at national level that have been set up. But I think these platforms are not yet working very well. And once the law is in place, then we will have guidelines established for the platforms and for the different stakeholders to be able to participate and use. And I think I did mention that we involve civil society organizations and the private sector holistically in addressing these issues. And your point has been taken, Nicholas. But to let you know that for me now at the regional level, we don't implement. Implementation goes down to the national level. That's probably where the challenge is. But for me as a person, I strongly believe in an integrated approach and working with the actors that help you to implement issues at the ground. You don't even need money for them to be able to implement. They need, first of all, the information and technology and knowledge and the information. Then they will be able to source funding from their own sources. But also if we have funds at the regional level, at national level, then we can advance them to enhance our capacities. So I think your point is taken and we'll be able to put this in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Jessica. There are two questions remaining, one on CADEP, whether it is going to be another level at the EAC level. And the other question for Rita, whether she can accept to strike a deal. Yeah, David.
Thank you, gentlemen, for the questions. I'll try and respond to them, the first one. Let me say that, just emphasize that CADAP, of course, is a continental program being cascaded downwards from the continental level to the national level. But to ensure coordination and alignment, the regional economic communities are being required to have also a regional compact to make sure that as they work with the partner states, issues of regional nature that cut across the borders are also addressed adequately. And that's why the EAC partner states really deemed it necessary to have a regional compact. And the difference between the national and the regional is not that there's duplication. Actually, the regional compact adds value and complements what is happening at the national level. Countries may have their own specific priorities, which may vary from one country to another, but there are those issues that cut across the countries. There may be issues to do with trade, issues to do with SPS, issues to do with transboundary pests and diseases that really require regional action and coordination. So that is really in the spirit of the EAC integration process to have this kind of regional mechanism. I think there was a second question, which was basically touching on the status. Where are we? As I mentioned, in the whole process of the CADAP agenda, for the case of EAC, the first stage was like to take stock of what is happening in the region in terms of the agricultural landscape and policies, institutional arrangements, and all that. And that is what informed the development of the regional compact, which spells out now the regional priorities for the region. So from there, we are moving to formulation of the regional agriculture investment plan, which now unpacks the priorities in terms of how we should address these priorities, and also in terms of the level of resources required to drive us in terms of agricultural transformation. So that is where we are in terms of the status.
Yeah, Rita.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always easier to when you have one question to answer. But to Dr. Okurut, firstly, I would like to commend Dr. Okurut for having great work he's doing at NEMA, because the NEMA POA is a waste compost project that is one of the largest in the region. And I must say that we've had several attempts to have financiers approach you. For confidentiality, I won't really mention who, but we've gotten quite close to getting NEMA a funder, and we're still working very hard to do so. We're doing the same in the region. So we do a sort of matchmaking for projects and funders, and there's actually quite a lot of interest for East Africa. So I'm quite optimistic that in the coming very soon, there should be something coming through for NEMA. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm taking two questions. Yeah, we are remaining with a few minutes. One from Honorable Patricia, and another one from the gentleman. Gender. Okay, I will take three. Yes.
Thank you. Probably mine is not a question. I'm really disappointed because if we had these people here, probably the questions which are being raised here would have been answered by the people representing the partner states. Because EAC is just coordination and only the partner states implement. So whatever the framework they are talking about have to be implemented by the partner states. So they should be able to answer this question, and some of you represent those partner states. That's one big challenge which we cannot be asking. So the framework are there, the coordination is there, the policies are there. What is next is for the countries to actually do the implementation, because we cannot implement at regional level. That's something which I thought is important to raise. Honorable Jessica tried, but that's why people are asking you if you can give them money to do projects. There is no money at regional level to do projects. The money is within our own partner states. One, but Honorable Jessica and probably the rest, I'm a parliamentarian. And as a parliamentarian, we heard about issues of CADAP. The countries have not even reached 10%. But parliamentarians, are they even aware on CADAP? They are the ones who vote the budget. But if they are not aware what happens, on Sunday we had an IPU meeting, the Interparliamentary Union meeting, and that's why I'm here, to look at how can we enter into the whole aspects of climate change. The reason one we are raising is the Paris Agreement was passed, was agreed upon. We are talking about its implementation beyond 2020, and probably some of the steps which have been taken between now and now. Now at EAC level, you negotiated, you came back. Have you even reached Yala to explain what is this Paris Agreement? Leave alone the parliaments of partner states. I think it's high time that we involve parliament, because they have a role to play in legislation, in sensitization, and in voting of the budget. If they don't understand how do they force the Minister of Finance to bring more money in the budget to actually address the issues of climate change, the issues of disaster risk reduction, and all the other aspects which we are talking about. So for me, it's not questions. I'm just appealing that whoever is involved, please involve parliamentarians. I know we work very well with the department, with the DSG office at EAC level, and I'm lucky because I've been part of it, I understand. But what about my colleagues in Yala? Nobody understands. When I was coming, the speaker said, these are Patricia's issues. So, so he was invited. He said, let Patricia go. She's the one who understands these things. So you can imagine if at Yala level we don't understand. What about the national parliament? What about the local authorities? What about the local councils? When will they implement? That is my appeal at EAC level, and I hope the people who are here are also listening. And when the funders are requested to allow members of parliament also to come to to cope. They should understand, they needed to understand these issues in order to help. Thank you very much.
So I allow, Madam. Yeah, that will be the last one because there is another session that is going. Thank you.
So thank you very much for this presentation. So my question is it's a simple one. You've talked about the important role of the governments, the important role of private sector. I'd like to hear from all of you on the adaptation, the disaster risks reduction, and on the mitigation side. What is the role of local communities, pastoralists, hunter-gatherers, women to be part of the solutions for climate change along all these files, so that it's truly a collaborative effort and that some of the great things that the communities are already doing can get mobilized and scaled up and access new types of funding that is available out there to help bring this to scale?
Thank you. I would invite Honorable Jessica to respond to a question and then to close the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director. I would like to thank all those who have made this session very, very lively and active. Thank you very much, Patricia, for your comments. I agree with you 100% that members of parliament need to understand the provisions of the CADAP, the Malabo Declaration, and all these continental targets that have been put in place and frameworks, as well as the outcomes of COPs like this one, and also the CBD COP and many others. So that is something that I think we need to take up, Director, very seriously, but also to ensure at national level, participation is also done. Now, for IALA and the national parliaments, there has been some minimum interaction, but not with the entire parliament. It's been with the committees that are relevant to the sector. I think it is important to organize maybe one big conference for parliaments entirely, so that these presentations can be made to them. I remember we did so for the Parliament of Kenya, because they did invite us, and it was very surprising to hear that members of parliament are not aware of some of these issues. So you are very right in what you're saying, including the local authorities and communities. Now, some of these actions need to be done at national level. Of course, at regional level, it will not be possible for us to go completely down, but we can arrange, particularly for city authorities, for cross-border communities, where we have mandate as an East African community, but ensure that at national level, they are also able to cascade this down. And thank you very much. I think this relates to the role of communities. Definitely, it is very important. The role of women, the role of the youth, and other special interest groups in climate action, but also to organize them, to build their capacity, so that they can take action and also access funding is very, very important. And I do agree with you. So I thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, for coming, for actively participating at our side event. You have the contacts already up here. If there are any additional questions or further questions, please do not hesitate to communicate with us. Send us emails or call us, and we will respond to your questions. And thank you very much for your interest in what we do at the regional level. And I'm closing by saying that the EAC is it's rated one of the best regional economic communities, even though they say when you are a dwarf, don't compare yourself with another dwarf. So we will have to grow up and become more competitive and pull up the rest of the regional economic communities in Africa. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you.
Thank you. Rendezvous tomorrow. We have another event. Time will be communicated. Thank you very much.
And by the way, I will apologize on behalf of the ministers. I think they are held up in the high level and other events because they were invited at short notice. So do not we will be able to share the outcome of these meetings with them in our council meetings. Thank you.